Hi everyone. I'm in a new location today. I'm in Rainbow's Sunflower Room. It's on the west side of the church. And of course, the sunflower is the state flower of Kansas. And so I love that we have a room called the Sunflower Room on the side of the church where the sun sets. And as we all know, sunflowers follow this 24-hour cycle where they continue to turn in the morning facing the east as the sun rises, and throughout the day start turning towards the west. And then, of course, in the night, prepare that cycle all over again. I'm sitting in front of a commissioned piece for this room, built by Arlie Regier. Arlie lived from 1931 to 2014. He grew up in Kansas and was a longtime member here at Rainbow. He was always fascinated with wheels and gears and machines. So this piece was built over a 3-month period. It's often referred to as the Mennonite history piece, or the Mennonites in Kansas history piece. As Leo Gertz said to me once, quote, "This piece combines Anabaptist theology, practice, and the experience of Kansas Mennonites on the prairie." There's lots of symbols in this piece. You'll see here 2 people singing. Behind them, 5 bars representing the musical staff. For Arlie, I believe these figures also represented the East Hill Singers, one of the core programs of the Arts in Prison program at the Lansing Correctional Facility. Thanks to the vision of Elvira Voth, who was part of Rainbow, remains part of Rainbow in spirit. Thanks to her vision, East Hill Singers offers the men of the East Unit facility the opportunity to experience great choral music in a personal way. And of course, it provides fellowship between inmates and community singers. And of course, there are a few Rainbow men who have participated in that. I love how they sing, make music, shoulder to shoulder. Then we have an open book, which might symbolize the Bible or other sacred literature, or it might be simply a symbol of education. Daughter Amy remembers Arlie saying that this image refers to a figure at a pulpit, engaging in meaningful work, study, application of sacred literature. Now, Arlie supported the work of Mennonite Disaster Service. This is a volunteer network of Anabaptist churches that responds to those affected by disasters, such as tornadoes. You see here a tornado getting the best of a house. Again, daughter Amy said, quote, "Dad felt strongly about the importance of such service acts and appreciated the Mennonite translation of discipleship into service actions," end quote. Some also see Isaiah 2:4, Isaiah chapter 2:4 in this piece. Quote, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Some see in this piece this sword into plowshare movement and struggle. Others have pointed out that they see in this a movement from rural to urban, from past to future, and all the changing technology that has come with the prairie experience for many Mennonites. You'll see here at the bottom of the sculpture, there is what sort of resonates with a threshing stone. The Bethel College, the Mennonite school in North Newton, Kansas, the Bethel College Threshers. This one has an excess spoke. Threshing stones traditionally have 7 spokes. This has an extra one, which Amy said that Arlie loved. And one of the final things I'll point out here is that every year on a Saturday close to Easter, neighborhood families and children enjoy the Easter egg hunt in Whitmore Playground. So some see in this the act of hiding and finding eggs, and all that eggs represent in terms of fertility and new life. Of course, at the top, some see loaves of bread, maybe even communion cups in the sunflower head. People think of the Kansas wheat fields. And perhaps we are drawn to think about times Jesus shared in rituals around the table, when he took elements of the earth, when he took fish, when he took bread and the cup and shared it with his friends and his disciples. From daughter Amy, this sculpture shows a big, complex system of process with excess, unexplainable creativity that always wants to connect and make something else. Amy also offered to me once a word of caution. She believes that her dad, Arlie, would want the changing community at Rainbow to enjoy interpreting and understanding this piece along with the changing times and changing world. The artist's intentions are simply pollination, she said, should not overly control the process or the application. So these are simply interpretive remarks, connections, and reflections, like pollination. I'll show here to Arlie's wife, Sue, and the piece that she wrote about this sculpture.
Move by the gospel, let us move with every gift and art. The image of creative love indwells each human heart. God maker calls creation good, so let us now express with sound and color, stone and wood, the shape of holiness. Let weavers form from broken strands a tapestry of prayer. Let
We turn now to Scripture, and we continue in our Exodus study. I think we could pay heed to Amy Regeer's advice. Like this sculpture, each community in its age and its time and place, each community is invited and challenged to interpret and apply the biblical story to the changing times and the changing world. So consider what I have to say today as interpretive remarks, connections, reflections, hopefully that serve as pollination and doesn't overly control how you relate to Scripture.
All right, we're reading from Exodus 2, verses 11 to 22, and this is a New Revised Standard Version. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinfolk. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, he saw 2 Hebrews fighting, and he said to the one in the wrong, "Why do you strike your fellow Hebrew?" He answered, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely this thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses.
But Moses fled from Pharaoh. He settled in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. But some shepherds came and drove them away. Moses got up and came to their defense and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come back so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why did you leave the man? Invite him to break bread." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She bore a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, "I have been an alien residing in a foreign land."
As we move through Exodus, you'll notice that sometimes the writer gives an absorbent amount of detail. We'll feel bogged down at times, trust me. Other times, the details are so spare, and we are told only the bare minimum. We don't know what Moses' growing up years look like. We only know from the text that this scene begins when he had grown up. We know he grew up in the palace, right, as practically as Pharaoh's grandson, raised by Pharaoh's daughter. Presumably, he had access to education and grew up as nobility. We don't know if he maintained contact with his Hebrew brothers and sisters and family, and really what he knew about his birth story. We are told simply that when he had grown up, he went out to his people and he saw their forced labor. This implies that Moses lived a rather sheltered existence, maybe within the halls of the palace, but also that he knew that the Hebrews were his people, or at least this translation implies that. This is a pivotal moment in Moses' story, his development. In all the previous scenes, Moses relied on other people, right? He was kind of a passive recipient of other people's actions. But here is the first time Moses takes action, and a questionable one at that. What does Moses do when he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew? It says, I love this detail, he looks this way and that. How many of us have done that, even just today, right? Making sure nobody is watching before we make sort of a questionable decision or a move. We look this way and that. And he kills the Egyptian and hides him in the sand, and presumably saves the Hebrew. We don't know if this was premeditated or just an impulsive decision. Again, we're not told anything in terms of what precipitated this. Well, the next day, Moses goes out again, leaves the security of the palace. And what should he see? This time it's two Hebrews fighting, one striking another. Once again, he takes action and he intervenes. But maybe somewhat surprisingly, the Hebrews want nothing to do with Moses. For word got out, presumably the Hebrew that he saved just the day before had spread the word that Moses was a killer. So instead of feeling grateful to Moses for saving the Hebrew the day before, they question him. Who are you? Who made you ruler and judge over us? Moses' presence evoked a strong reaction. They did not see him as a trustworthy person. Even if he was born to Hebrew parents, he was not one of them. How dare he intervene in their affairs? Plus, maybe they worried that Moses' action the day before would put the Hebrews in even more jeopardy. So, again, they wanted nothing to do with Moses. Where did his loyalties lie? When the going got tough, surely he would just return to the powers of the palace. So maybe it's not surprising that the Hebrews wanted nothing to do with this sellout. As I noted last week, from early on, Moses had this double identity, right? He belonged to two nations, two peoples. Sometimes that can leave a person feeling like they belong nowhere. So after he tries and fails to intervene, the second dispute, he is scared and he flees. He is sure that Pharaoh would find out. Clearly, people were gossiping and his life would be on the line. And sure enough, Pharaoh was not happy. So Moses flees, lost as he was in the basket, the ark on the Nile River. And he settles in the land of Midian. And it's so interesting to me that right away, Moses finds himself in the middle of a third dispute. Okay? Packed into these short scenes are three disputes. This time, the dispute is between shepherds and a group of women drawing water at the well. Moses seems to be a magnet to these disputes. After he protects the women at the well, he finds a new home, a new family, and he settles there for a while in Midian. It says he resided there in a foreign land as an alien, now with his own family, his own wife and child. I imagine many of us can point to times in our growing up years when we found ourselves in the middle of disputes, either as a more passive observer or maybe right in the middle of the dispute as the instigator. Times we looked this way and that, right, as we figured out what to do ethically and morally, especially in our growing up years. We're figuring out what our moral and ethical compass is, especially when it comes to conflict and dispute and appropriate action to take. We all have been socially, culturally conditioned by our upbringing to respond to disputes and conflict and abuse in different ways. I often encourage couples during premarital sessions that I lead to reflect together on sort of underlying emotional patterns or responses that they each have toward stress and conflict, because these emotional responses are often hardwired in us and are again shaped by our genetics and the environment around us. In response to chaotic situations, we have this fight or flight instinct, right? We all have defense behaviors. We so often revert to kind of this fight or flight option. We deal with threat often kind of in this fight or flight way. That of course is way too simplistic because freezing is also part of this fight or flight response. Some of us experience immobility in the face of threat. I've long been intrigued by the way psychologists have talked about depression as sometimes the result or impacted by a person having these strong feelings of anger, right? These impulses to fight back or at least stand their ground, but also have a strong instinct to run away, to flight. So depression can sometimes enter in when our defenses, our defense behaviors that protect us from threat, when those become blocked, inhibited, or arrested, this can create such havoc internally, can create so much stress. Well, I mention this partly because I see Moses sort of choosing these different options and figuring what situations call from him. And I mention this because we're living in a time of high volatility and stress, chaos, so many conflicts that maybe we're in the middle of, or that we're more kind of passive observers of. with elections pending, with so much political and social turmoil around us. Some of us, like Moses, who, right, is coming of age in this scene, are like having our eyes opened, maybe for the first time or in a new way, to oppression, to hatred that is around us. And we don't always know what to do. We sometimes get it wrong in terms of how we respond. Wish we could have another chance to respond. We look this way and that. Sometimes we take flight from the situation when the going gets tough. Sometimes we fight. There is also a lot of women who have suggested that the options of fight or flight by no means captures it all. This idea of befriending and tending as a defense mechanism might also speak to some of us. For some of us, we're hardwired to want to tend to the chaos in ways that might be helpful or not helpful. But again, it's just being aware of what we're inclined to do and make sure that we're reaching for the most mature and life-giving response to the distress and conflict around us. So I'll just speak personally here. What I'm interested in these days is reflecting on ways of kind of growing my and our collective ability to respond to chaos, volatility, even violence in mature ways. So that we're not always defaulting to just how we've been wired or conditioned. We can keep learning our own reactivity to situations and why that is. And again, just keep becoming more and more mature in how we respond to chaos within us and around us. Well, in closing, I want to share a clip from a conversation I had several months ago with Stan and Anita Bone. Stan was the first paid pastor of Rainbow Mennonite Church in the late 50s. He and Anita are still living about 3-hour drive from Kansas City. And he was a young, rather inexperienced, but incredibly wise young leader and pastor. When he came to Rainbow, he kept on referring to Rainbow as a great school. He learned a lot, he made lots of mistakes, and continues to draw lessons from his time in Kansas City. But if you think about him, young, white, Mennonite, coming to the city in a time, continues to be a time of racial unrest, but there were particular dynamics in the late 50s and early 60s that he was waking up to and trying his best to respond maturely to. For me, he's such an inspiration in how he talks about waking up to injustices and the importance of not fleeing. He might have been conditioned to, as a Mennonite, to think about conflict as something to avoid, to flee from, right? But he learned, I think, over time, the importance of wading in, of tending to injustice, in a way that hopefully can transform it. So listen to what he has to say, and hope it provides more pollination for you this week.
One thing, I was invited to join NAACP, and I was, I think, one of two white people who went to meetings, and that was an education. And I ended up picketing a store and things that I hadn't grown up doing. And when the poverty program came on, the local group sent me to Washington, D.C. with our application for funds for the war on poverty. That was an education also. And I think when I first went to Kansas City, I thought of Mennonites being mediators. And in a few years, I realized, no, you take sides. You pitch which side you're on, and then you relate in a Christian way, but you don't stand as a third party outside of the conflicts.
Well, thank you for the influence you've had in our lives, Stan and Anita.
Yeah.
You've been a real blessing to us.
Well, thank you for helping educate me to be a pastor.
Oh.
Well, my image of you, Stan, was this young, competent, a little forceful, energetic pastor. So if there was any, the student in you, it wasn't apparent to me. Your projection that I remember was a doer of good, a shepherd of the congregation.
Huh.
So I hope I hope my image is a true reflection of how you felt.
Well, thank you.
We learned a lot of lessons along the way, didn't we?
Yeah.
Seek the peace of the city. Make this land your home. I have sent you here to prosper. Make this land your home. Seek the peace of your neighbor.
Hi, everybody. For this week's Moment of Wonder, I thought I would do a recap of Vacation Bible School that happened last weekend. Our theme was Great Big Beautiful World, and we explored the creation story. But to start off our time, we had a little visitor join us, and I have a video that I thought I would share with you.
Well, hello there, Uncle Godfrey. How are you?
Oh, hi, Sarah. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Oh,
It's been a
it,
while.
it has been. It's too bad we can't all meet in person for Bible school, but this is kind of fun.
I know.
Yeah.
We have to make the best of things these days, don't we?
Oh, we certainly do. Well, it is summer outside, and I do like it being nice and warm outside. Uh-huh.
Well, that fits perfectly because our theme for Bible school this week is God's Great Big Beautiful World.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is a big, beautiful world out there.
It is. So, how have you been spending time in nature?
Oh, I saw something really cool. So there's a tree in my backyard, and there is a family of cardinals. See, I saw the mommy cardinal and the daddy cardinal flying around, and they've been sitting on the fence chirping away, sometimes waking us up in the morning. But then I noticed they have a nest.
Whoa.
One day, I guess the cardinals, the mommy and daddy cardinal, were out flying away somewhere. So I very carefully, I didn't touch the nest, but I peeked into it, and there were 4 eggs in there.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then I saw the mommy come back, and she kept going back and forth. Oh, a couple days later, I looked again, and some of the eggs had hatched.
Oh my goodness.
And even the next day, all the eggs were hatched. There were 4 little baby cardinals. Oh, so amazing.
Wow.
Oh, I even took a picture of the eggs. Here, I'll share that with you.
Oh, perfect. Thanks.
There's a picture of the eggs. See the eggs there?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, and then I took a video, and here is a little video of when 2 of the little birdies had hatched.
Oh,
look at that.
So cute.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Right in my backyard, I can see amazing things that God created.
That is wonderful. Wow. Well, that just reminds me that we're in creation all the time, and that if we just take time to look around, we can see all the beautiful things.
I wonder if anyone else has seen anything cool in the great big beautiful world.
So I invite all of us to think about how are we connecting with nature in this time of great upheaval. I have found that it's really great to be able to find grounding in nature and just get outside and breathe. During Vacation Bible School, we explored the creation story through art. And so I wanted to share a few of the drawings of the children that were involved in their creation, what they thought the creation story might look like. And we also spent some time working with Andy Goldsworthy as inspiration for our connection with nature. So our children went on a nature walk where they listened to the sounds and the sights and the smells, and I encouraged them not to use taste. And on this walk, they gathered different materials that they found to use for their Andy Goldsworthy piece of art. So I thought I would share a few of those pieces as well. So maybe this can inspire you to get out in nature and collect and make something beautiful.